Doctors are warning diabetics everywhere. Ignore these 7 vegetables and you may be gambling with your life. But for one man, these foods didn't just lower his blood sugar, they saved his future. John was 64 when his doctor delivered the words that felt like a prison sentence. Your diabetes is out of control. If you don't make a change now, complications will follow. The doctor's tone was flat, clinical, but the words hit John like a hammer. Complications. That single word carried weight he could hardly bear. He knew what it meant. Heart disease, nerve damage, kidney failure, even blindness and amputations. He had seen it all before. John's older brother had lost a leg to diabetes. A neighbor he'd known for years had gone blind. An old coworker had died of a sudden heart attack, his blood sugar never under control. These memories haunted John as he sat in the sterile office, the smell of disinfectant thick in the air. The doctor listed prescriptions, stricter diets, and the possibility of insulin injections. John barely heard him. His mind was already racing. He had grandchildren he wanted to watch grow up, a wife who had stood beside him for 40 years. He had dreams of retirement trips with Mary, of fishing in quiet lakes and walking sandy beaches. Suddenly, all of it seemed fragile, slipping away. He left the office in silence, clutching the papers the doctor had handed him, but holding on tighter to fear. Fear of losing control, fear of becoming a burden, fear of losing everything that mattered most. That night at the dinner table, John pushed his food around without eating. Mary, who knew him better than anyone, watched closely. "Talk to me," she said gently. John's shoulders sank as he finally admitted what the doctor had told him. He expected panic or anger, but Mary didn't flinch. She simply reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "We're not giving up," she whispered. "We'll fight this together." But Mary's plan wasn't what John expected. She didn't talk about another pill, another appointment, another lecture. She talked about food, not just any food. 7 vegetables, simple, powerful, and backed by science. Each one had the potential to protect his body, lower his blood sugar, and give him a chance to fight back. John wanted to believe her, but doubt gnawed at him. Could vegetables really make that much difference? Could something as ordinary as food stand against something as serious as diabetes? Mary leaned forward. "You have nothing to lose by trying." "But everything to lose if you don't," her words landed. They weren't just encouragement. They were a challenge. And John, even in his fear, felt a flicker of resolve. Quick pause. If you've ever faced a health scare that forced you to change, tap the like button. It may remind someone else that change is possible, even when the odds feel stacked against you. The next morning, Mary put her plan into action. She started with a vegetable John remembered only as bitter, chewy, and unappealing. To him, it was nothing more than rabbit food. To her, it was the foundation of his survival. Vegetable number 1, kale, the warrior leaf. The first time Mary set a bowl of kale in front of John, he frowned. Memories of childhood dinners came back, plates of soggy greens he had tried to avoid. He never understood why anyone ate kale when there were easier, tastier options. But Mary was patient. She explained that kale wasn't just a side dish, it was a weapon. Kale is packed with magnesium, which helps muscles absorb glucose more effectively. For diabetics, that means less sugar floating dangerously in the bloodstream. Its antioxidants fight inflammation that silently damages blood vessels. And its high fiber slows digestion, preventing the sharp spikes and crashes that left John drained after meals. John listened, skeptical but curious. Mary didn't stop with facts. She transformed kale into something he could actually enjoy. She blended it into smoothies with blueberries, strawberries, and a splash of almond milk. The bitterness softened, replaced with a taste John didn't mind. She sautéed it with garlic until it was tender and aromatic. She baked kale chips, crispy and seasoned, to replace the potato chips John used to crave. At first, John tried them reluctantly, but soon he noticed something remarkable. The heavy fog he felt after meals began to lift. Instead of slumping on the couch, he had enough energy to take evening walks with Mary. His fasting numbers, once stubbornly high, started to creep downward. On his next visit, his doctor raised an eyebrow. "Something's working," he said. John nodded but didn't explain just yet. He wanted to see how far this experiment could go. More than the numbers, it was the feeling that struck him. For the first time in years, John felt a spark of control. Kale wasn't just bitter leaves anymore. It was proof that change was possible, that his choices mattered. Each bite was a quiet act of defiance. Against the fear, against the disease, against the future he dreaded. Let me ask you, what food have you resisted in the past only to discover later it could help you? Share your answer in the comments. Your story might be the nudge someone else needs tonight. John began to look at kale differently, not as punishment but as a warrior leaf, sharp, strong, relentless, and as he chewed, he imagined it fighting inside him, pushing back against the disease that once felt unstoppable. The battle had begun. Kale gave John his first taste of hope. For the first time in years, his body responded. His numbers shifted in the right direction. But Mary knew one vegetable alone couldn't win the war. The enemy, diabetes, was stubborn, and it would take more than a single weapon. The next morning, Mary reached into the fridge and placed something simple on the counter. Light green, crisp, almost ordinary. John raised an eyebrow. Cucumbers? He asked. That's your secret weapon? Mary smiled. Don't underestimate them. Vegetable number 2, cucumbers. The refreshing cleanser. John had always thought of cucumbers as decoration, something to float in water pitchers at restaurants or add crunch to a salad. But to Mary, cucumbers were more than garnish. Their power lay in hydration. Diabetes often drained John, leaving him thirsty and fatigued. Cucumbers, nearly all water, replenished him naturally. Their soluble fiber slowed digestion, preventing blood sugar spikes. And perhaps most important, they helped flush excess sugar out of his system, giving his kidneys a break from constant strain. Mary sliced them into salads with a splash of vinegar. She infused water with cucumber and mint, turning plain drinks into something refreshing. She even blended them into smoothies, where their coolness balanced stronger flavors. John was surprised. He didn't feel like he was on a diet. Instead, every bite felt like cleansing, as if his body was rinsing away years of damage. And something else happened. The gnawing hunger that often drove him to late-night snacks began to fade. Cucumbers filled him up without filling him out. His midnight raids on the pantry grew less frequent. Slowly, his cravings loosened their grip, and with each skipped snack, his numbers improved. Mary noticed more than the numbers. She noticed the man she loved returning, less irritable, more energetic, more present. Think about your own kitchen. Are cucumbers decoration or are they defense? If this part of John's journey resonates, hit the like button. It helps this message reach others who may need the reminder tonight. But cucumbers were just the beginning. Mary had another plan, one that would sting John's eyes and burn his throat. Yet within its sharpness lay protection for his most vulnerable organ, his heart. Vegetable number 3, onions. The shield John had never been a fan of onions. He hated the sting in his eyes when chopping them, the bite of raw slices on a burger, the lingering smell on his hands. To him, onions were background noise, not the main act, but Mary pressed forward. This one matters, she said firmly. Onions contain sulfur compounds and quercetin, powerful antioxidants proven to lower blood sugar and improve heart health. For diabetics, heart disease is a shadow that never leaves. And for John, who already carried high blood pressure, it was a threat he couldn't ignore. Mary roasted onions until they were sweet and caramelized. She sautéed them into soups, stews, and stir-fries. She even tucked slivers of raw onion into fresh salads. At first, John resisted, wincing at the taste. But over time, he adapted. Something shifted inside him. The sting he once disliked became symbolic, a reminder that healing sometimes burned before it soothed. And slowly, his numbers proved the truth. His fasting blood sugar dropped again. His doctor called it progress. John called it hope. Each onion slice became more than flavor. It became a shield, guarding his heart, strengthening his body, and pushing back against the disease that had once felt inevitable. Here's a challenge. Make onions the star of one meal this week. Notice how you feel, and then share your results in the comments. You might spark an idea for someone else walking the same path. Still, Mary knew the greatest test was yet to come. The next vegetable was harsh, bitter, and hard to swallow. John would hate it at first, but within its rough exterior lay one of nature's most powerful weapons against diabetes. Vegetable number 4, bitter melon. Nature's insulin. John stared at the strange, wrinkled vegetable Mary placed before him. Its green skin was ridged and rough, its very appearance uninviting. What is that? He asked, almost disgusted. Bitter melon, Mary replied. This one may be the most important of all. John's first bite was almost unbearable. The bitterness exploded across his tongue, sharp and lingering. He nearly spit it out. Mary's voice was calm but firm. Sometimes medicine doesn't taste good, but it saves your life. She was right. Bitter melon contained compounds that mimicked insulin, helping glucose move from the blood into cells. It wasn't folklore. It was science, backed by studies and tradition alike. For centuries, cultures around the world had used bitter melon to fight high blood sugar. Mary experimented to soften the blow. She stir-fried it with garlic. She blended it into juices with lemon to cut the harshness. She sliced it thin, cooking it with spices until it was tolerable. John forced himself to keep trying, and the results were undeniable. His blood sugar spikes flattened. His morning readings stabilized. Even his cravings weakened. What had once been unbearable became, in John's mind, a test of discipline. Healing, he realized, wasn't always comfortable. Sometimes it tasted bitter before it made you better. But the fight wasn't easy. There were nights when John pushed his plate away in frustration, muttering that he couldn't take it anymore. There were mornings when the numbers didn't drop fast enough, when the progress felt invisible. There were moments of doubt, when fear whispered that nothing would ever be enough. Mary stood firm through it all. Trust the process, she reminded him. One bite at a time, and John, though tempted to quit, held on. Each vegetable added another layer of defense. Each day carried him further from despair and closer to hope. By now, John's journey had transformed. Kale had given him strength. Cucumbers refreshed him. Onions shielded him. Bitter melon disciplined him. But Mary wasn't finished. The next step would bring color back to John's plate and hope back to his vision, literally. The bitter taste of melon lingered in John's memory for days. But slowly he began to accept it. Each vegetable Mary introduced carried its own lesson: strength, cleansing, shielding, discipline. Together they formed a foundation, but Mary wasn't done. One evening she returned from the market with a bag bursting with color: bright reds, yellows, oranges. John raised his eyebrows. Finally, he chuckled. Something that doesn't look like punishment. Mary grinned. Beauty on the outside, power on the inside. Vegetable number 5, bell peppers. The colorful protector bell peppers were more than decoration for stir-fries. They were loaded with vitamin C, nearly 3 times more than oranges. For John, that mattered. Vitamin C wasn't just about immunity. It supported his blood vessels, reduced inflammation, and gave his struggling heart the backup it desperately needed. The peppers also carried antioxidants like carotenoids, which fought oxidative stress, the hidden damage diabetes inflicted day by day. Mary roasted them until their skins blistered and peeled, releasing a sweet aroma. She sliced them into crunchy strips for snacking, dipped into hummus. She stuffed them with quinoa and herbs, turning them into meals rich in flavor yet low in sugar. John loved them immediately. Their sweetness was a welcome contrast after weeks of bitter melon and sharp onions. But beyond taste, he noticed something else. His energy began to return. Morning walks didn't leave him breathless. His skin seemed brighter, his eyes clearer. Mary noticed too. "You look different," she whispered one morning as he sipped coffee. Lighter. The peppers in their bright hues weren't just food. They were a symbol, proof that healing could also be joyful, colorful, and full of life. Quick pause. Which bell pepper do you prefer? Red, yellow, or green? Drop your answer in the comments. You might be surprised which one helps someone else try it for the first time. But Mary wasn't stopping at peppers. The next weapon she introduced was humble, earthy, and sweet. A vegetable John had eaten his whole life but never realized could save his sight. Vegetable number 6. Carrots. The eyes of hope. John had grown up with carrots on his plate. Boiled, buttered, often ignored. To him they were side notes, but Mary knew better. Carrots carried beta-carotene, which the body transformed into vitamin A. For diabetics, eye health was fragile, always at risk of retinopathy and vision loss. John often complained of blurred vision, a shadow of fear hanging over every glance at his glucose meter. Mary made carrots the centerpiece. She roasted them until caramelized, glazed them lightly with herbs, blended them into warming soups. Their natural sweetness satisfied John's cravings, offering a safer alternative to desserts he once leaned on. Over weeks, John noticed small changes. His night vision seemed sharper. His eyes didn't strain as much when reading. More than once, he found himself blinking in surprise, realizing he could see details he had begun to accept as lost. Carrots became a reminder that not all damage was permanent. That with care, even fragile parts of him could heal. But there was more. Their fiber steadied his blood sugar. while antioxidants guarded him from the invisible damage diabetes left behind. John began to crave the orange glow of carrots on his plate. They weren't background anymore, they were a lifeline. Still, Mary knew the war wasn't over. They had strengthened his body, shielded his eyes, cleansed his blood. But one more enemy lurked in silence. Infections, cholesterol, hidden threats to his weakened system. For that, she had saved one of the oldest remedies of all time. Vegetable number 7. Garlic. The ancient warrior. When Mary set down a small bulb of garlic, John laughed. Garlic? Really? I thought this was medicine, not spaghetti night. Mary smiled knowingly. This little one fights harder than you think. Garlic had been medicine for centuries, used by warriors, healers, and entire civilizations. Its allicin compounds lowered cholesterol, stabilized blood pressure, and even improved insulin sensitivity. For John, whose blood pressure had long been a silent enemy, garlic was more than flavor. It was armor. Mary roasted cloves until they turned sweet and spreadable. She crushed fresh garlic into dressings and marinades. She simmered it into soups that warmed John from the inside out. At first, he teased her. Are you trying to keep vampires away or me alive? But over time, he felt the difference. His blood pressure readings steadied. His doctor, once cautious, now raised his eyebrows in pleasant surprise. Garlic also gave John something intangible. Confidence. There was strength in knowing he was tapping into remedies used for generations, wisdom older than modern medicine. And though the smell lingered, John wore it like a badge of honor. Healing wasn't always pretty, but it was powerful. By now, John's diet had transformed. Kale gave him strength. Cucumbers cleansed him. Onions shielded him. Bitter melon disciplined him. Bell peppers brightened him. Carrots restored his vision. Garlic armed him. And slowly, John himself transformed. His mornings grew lighter. His body steadier. His spirit stronger. The numbers on his glucose meter reflected what he felt inside. Progress. Real, undeniable progress. But progress wasn't the same as victory. Diabetes was relentless, always waiting for a slip. And John, despite his strength, was still human. There were nights of doubt, days of temptation, moments when he wondered if all of this was enough. Mary saw the struggle. She held his hand across the table, whispering the same words again and again. One bite at a time. And John, looking at the vegetables before him, realized this wasn't punishment. It was a gift, a second chance, one meal at a time. The journey had not been easy. For weeks, John fought against cravings, habits, and doubts. Every vegetable Mary introduced became both a battle and a breakthrough. But even warriors stumble. One cold evening, John sat alone at the kitchen table. The house was quiet, except for the hum of the refrigerator. On the counter lay a box of pastries, gifts from a neighbor. Their sugary scent filled the air. His hands trembled as he reached for one. He told himself it was harmless. Just one bite. Just one moment of comfort. But deep down, he knew the truth. For him, just one had always led to more. His heart pounded, his chest tight with more than temptation. It was fear. Fear of slipping back. Fear of undoing everything. Mary walked in. She saw the pastry in his hand, saw the pain in his eyes. She didn't scold. She didn't shout. Instead, she stepped closer, placed her hand gently on his, and whispered, "Remember why you started." John froze. The words pierced deeper than any lecture. He thought of his blurred vision, his fatigue, his doctor's warnings. He thought of Mary's tireless care, the meals she prepared, the nights she stayed awake worrying about him. He thought of his grandchildren, their laughter, their future. He set the pastry down. For the first time in years, he felt stronger than his cravings. Weeks later, John returned to the clinic. His doctor flipped through his charts, brows furrowed in disbelief. "John, what have you been doing?" John smiled. "Eating my vegetables." The doctor shook his head, then laughed. His A1C levels had dropped significantly. His blood pressure stabilized. His cholesterol lowered. Even his kidney function had improved. "These are the numbers of a man taking control of his health," the doctor said. "Keep this up and you're rewriting your future." For John, those words were more than statistics. They were freedom. For the first time in years, he felt the chains of diabetes loosen. Not gone, but weaker. At home, John stood before the mirror. He barely recognized himself. His face looked brighter, less burdened. His clothes fit differently, not from drastic weight loss, but from health returning to his frame. He thought of the 7 vegetables that had carried him here. Kale, His strength, cucumbers, his cleanse, onions, his shield, bitter melon, his discipline, bell peppers, his brightness, carrots, his sight, garlic, his armor. They weren't just foods. They were chapters of his survival story. Each one had played a role in rebuilding him. Mary joined him, her eyes shining. "You did it," she whispered. "No," John said, shaking his head. "We did it." John's story is more than one man's fight. It's a reminder to anyone battling diabetes that change is possible. That healing doesn't always come from a pill bottle, but from the simple, powerful gifts of nature. Every bite matters. Every choice builds or breaks your future. And sometimes the smallest steps, choosing kale over chips, cucumbers over soda, garlic over salt, create the biggest victories. So if you're listening now, ask yourself, which of these 7 vegetables will you add to your plate today? Which one will be the first step toward your own comeback? Share your answer in the comments. Your story might inspire someone else to begin theirs. And if John's journey touched you, don't keep it to yourself. Hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs hope, and subscribe so you won't miss more stories that can change lives. Because health isn't just about numbers on a chart. It's about living long enough to enjoy laughter with family, sunrises with loved ones, and moments that truly matter. John found his way back, one vegetable at a time, and so can you.